Welcome back to another edition of Songs of the Ozarks, a project of the Ozark Studies Institute and ongoing initiative of the Missouri State University Libraries. My name is Emalee Flatness, and today's date is March 2nd, 2023. Our special guest today is Dallas Jones, and we're here in the Ozarks Room at Missouri State University. Dallas, thank you so much for meeting with me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome, and if you wouldn't mind playing a song to start us off today?
Okay. Can do. I'm busted and I'm broken, and I never felt worse. Tired of breaking my back, trying to bury this curse. Can't remember when I've ever really felt so bad, like I'm losing everything that I never really had. Well, I've been looking up and I've been looking down. I've been looking so hard, can never be found. There's one thing I've been trying to do. I've been looking so hard for a woman like you. I've been looking so hard for a woman like you. Never thought that I would crumble when the going got tough. Think I finally realized I was never tough enough. Now I'm searching for the reason that'll give me no doubt. Tired of picking up the pieces, think I'm gonna throw them out. I've been looking up and I've been looking down. I've been looking so hard, it could never be found. There's one thing I've been trying to do. I've been looking so hard for a woman like you. I've been looking so hard for a woman like you. I've been looking up and I've been looking down. I've been looking so hard, it could never be found. There's one thing I've been trying to do. I've been looking so hard for a woman like you. I've been looking so hard for a woman like you. I've been looking so hard for a woman like you.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you.
So, was that one of your original songs?
That was one of my original songs, yes.
Amazing.
Oh, thanks.
And if I'm not mistaken, most of the music you play in your shows are originals.
A lot of them
correct?
are, yes. I have, I think, 9 or 10 studio albums of original music out in the universe.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, so I try to pull from that on occasion, for sure.
You're from the Ozarks originally, correct?
I am born and raised in Willard, Missouri.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Really great people come out of Willard, Missouri.
They sure can.
So, has the Ozarks region, and Willard is a rural community,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
do you think that has had a big effect on the songs that you've written?
I think some of them, yes. I think I've written a few songs about, farming. I'm a farmer. I'm a fourth generation farmer. So I write a few songs about that, a few songs about my grandparents, about my parents, my kids, stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with, the history of, the Ozarks Jubilee and Branson and things like that. It's, as a musician, growing up in the Ozarks, it's pretty prevalent and it's everywhere. That being said, it's probably less and less as, generations go on.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, it definitely has affected me in some ways, I'm sure.
Did any of your ancestors or even close relatives play music?
Yes, my grandpa Jones, definitely. In fact, he's probably my biggest influence in getting into music. I have great memories of all the aunts and uncles and the cousins getting together in the big living room of our farmhouse, and he would reach behind the couch and pull out this old Martin guitar that was just leaning up in the corner. Very valuable instrument. He would pull it out, and he would start playing these songs, and I can remember, being 5 or 6 years old, he would sing like, "Hey, hey, good looking, what you got cooking?" And at the time, I just thought, my grandpa wrote these songs. He must he must be famous. He must be, in his younger years, he must have been a famous musician. Because he would sing them with such conviction, and, it was great. And, of course, years later, I realized it was Hank Williams and Buck Owens and people like that. But I do know he was pretty active. There used to be a thing in the 50s, maybe 60s, down on Commercial Street, and it was called the Lyric Theater. And it was basically like a giant open mic jam session.
Wow.
And there would be a house band, and every week they would have somebody come on and play a few songs. The house band would back them up. And it was a theater. I mean, it wasn't like some little coffee shop or a bar. It was a theater. So I don't know how big it was, 100, 200 people probably. But I actually have some recordings of my grandpa at that. They had him on reel-to-reel, and at some point somebody had the good sense to get him digitized, and so that's actually probably something you might be interested in.
Yeah.
With your history preservation project.
What a treasure.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And it's a lot. Most of the people, I don't even know who it is. It's like several hours long, and then it's like one song. Here's my grandpa singing.
Wow.
And here's my aunt singing something.
It would be interesting to see.
It's pretty
find
neat.
descendants of those folks.
Yeah.
So did your grandpa? Is he who taught you to play originally?
I don't know if he really taught me. I just remember like it was always sort of there.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother started playing the guitar when he was probably 16 or 17. So I would have been 12 or 13. And I remember him practicing the guitar, and I'd be like, I think that looks pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever he would leave, to go wherever, I would sneak into his room, steal the guitar, and start practicing as fast as I could. And then at some point, I think my brother was like, "Hey, get your own guitar."
Right.
So I think I was probably 13 or 14, and that was my birthday present from my grandparents. They bought me a guitar.
Oh my goodness.
Sort of like a rite of passage. Like, here's your guitar. We don't have any lessons to teach you this, but just figure it out. You go ahead, go. So that's how it was.
What genres of music, whenever you were a child first getting into performing, really?
Well, playing, holing up in my bedroom and practicing that kind of stuff. I always tried to play Beatles songs, lots of classic rock stuff. And I tried to get into the electric guitar, tried to learn lead stuff, and it just wasn't for me. I couldn't do it. So my thing really with playing in general, I always say I learned how to play the guitar so I could accompany myself singing. I always felt like I'm more of a singer than a guitar player. So you have to have some instrument, and this is just sort of the one I picked.
When did you first start performing in public?
I was shortly after that. I remember being in my junior high musical and having a lead role in that.
Oh, wow.
And like really hadn't shown any interest in that beforehand, and then did that, and I still remember like the reaction like that I got, and I was like, oh, that feels good. I like that. I want to do more of that. So that was, I started out, doing theater and choir and stuff like that, and then would perform at, guitar, like choir concerts. They would do special music, and I'd come play the guitar and sing. And I played in church some, but then I really didn't start, I would say, my professional career till I was out of college. And, you do choir and you do things like that in school, and then you get out of school and it's like, what do you do now?
Right.
And most people stop. Honestly, most people stop. But I started going downtown to hear music my senior year of college, and met a young man named Mark Blue, who was in the local band Big Smith. At the time, they were just getting started and becoming a very big deal. But I was more drawn to him as just a solo guitar player. He used to do a Wednesday night show at the Outland, and it was just him and a guitar. And I remember walking in for the very first time and seeing this man on stage playing and singing, and I was like, I think I'd like to do that. That seems within my grasp, my reach.
Wow.
And so he was a huge influence for me, and I became friends with him, and we worked together. He recorded several of my first albums, and he's just always been a great mentor and a great friend, and a great Ozark treasure. How about that?
That's great.
Yeah.
When did you first start writing original music? Was it around that same
Right
time?
around that time. Right around that time. I remember doing an open mic night at the Outland and coming in with, 3 songs, and I forget what. They were probably 3 songs I learned from Mark. And huge response, huge reaction. It was great. All my friends were there. It was great. And then, doing that a few more times, and then actually another songwriter named Mike Stevens. He runs the Moxie Theater in town. He was in a band called the Honky Tonk Chateau at the time.
How cool.
And I remember him, after I got done, he's like, yeah, that's really great. How about you try and write some of your own songs? And I was like, okay, I will. And I came back the next week and I had a song. So I'd always kind of, dabbled in it a little in high school. They were, really, really terrible songs.
Oh, no.
That's just part of the process.
It is.
Very few people are just right out of the gate excellent. Not that I've ever achieved excellence, but they got better. The more you do it, the better you get. You get familiar with the process, and that's how you go.
So, something I love about your music is your picking style. How did you develop your style to accompany yourself so gracefully?
I really don't know. I kind of just started doing that one, and that's pretty much the one that I do.
That's awesome.
I'm sure I learned it from Mark, and he probably learned it from Bob Dylan, and Bob Dylan learned it from Bert Yanch or some other folk singer from the 40s, and so just gets passed along.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I also recently heard you on the piano.
Yeah.
And you're also a very accomplished piano player.
Well, I don't know if accomplished is I actually think I'm a better piano player than I am a guitar player, but I don't have as many avenues to play the piano.
Right.
It's just, I don't know, for some reason people really gravitate towards, a guy sitting in the corner playing the guitar. It's also easier to set up, versus dragging out a keyboard. But playing the piano came a lot easier to me. Like the guitar is such a frustrating, weird instrument anyway. None of it really makes sense, and there's all the strings. But with the piano, it's just it's all in a line. It's all one level.
Yeah.
And I remember my parents used to have this old organ, like a Lowry organ. There was a movement in the 70s where everybody bought organs.
What?
And everybody in my family had an organ. And they weren't great. They weren't like a nice Hammond organ. They were these Lowry organs. And I can remember we'd always play around with it. It would make funny sounds and rhythms and stuff. And one time I really sat down and they had some sheet music, but it had the chords. I never thought of the piano as having chords.
Right.
Never really put that together. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, well, that's a G chord. These are the same. They're just... And I can remember the night, sitting down and reading, and the song was Yesterday by the Beatles, which is a pretty hard song. And by the end of 20 minutes, I was like, I can play the piano. This is great. This is awesome. And the piano's, I feel like the piano's an instrument, like a little bit goes a long way. And all of a sudden, I saw progress, and I just could play the piano. It was great. And then I'd go back to playing the guitar, and I'm like, oh, this is so hard.
Right? And then we also just heard you play the harmonica.
The harmonica, yeah. And I'm not a great harmonica player by any means, but Bob Dylan is probably my biggest influence as a songwriter and a performer. And so harmonica is kind of a requirement for a lot of those early Dylan songs. So that's how I got into the harmonica. And it's just, when you're playing by yourself, it adds another element, something else, because it's kind of like a lead instrument, sort of. So that's the main reason I got into that. I don't sit around the house playing the harmonica. People who can really play the harmonica are amazing. I don't understand how they do it, because I have a harmonica and I don't know how they get those sounds.
See, I think it sounds 10 out of 10.
Oh, well, thanks. Well, thanks. Well, if you ever hear a really good blues harmonica player, it's amazing how they're making those sounds come out of this little thing.
I think that's something that is so intriguing to people, is that you can sound like several musicians whenever you're playing as a solo musician.
Yeah. Try to, yeah.
Yeah. What made you decide to go on the path of a solo musician instead of a band musician?
Well, I definitely played in bands. Bands are more fun, especially when you're younger. It's fun, you're out late. And then at the end of the night, they're like, here's your $20. And it's like, okay, that's fine. I'll do that a couple more times. But then as I got older, got married, had children, my time became a lot more valuable. Mm-hmm. So you definitely make, at least on my level, more money as a solo musician, for sure. And I never thought it could be a career in any way, shape, or form until I got a weekly gig. So I've been playing at the Springfield Brewing Company for over 10 years with Molly Healy, which is a long time to be, having the same gig week after week.
Right.
And, they pay us a certain amount, we make tips, and all of a sudden it was like, I make this much money on this day every week. And you do the math, and it's like, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Now, if I can get 2 days, or if I can get 3 days, and then all of a sudden it's like, I think I'm onto something here. And so I just try and, book I always tell my wife, I'm only booking gigs that meet these criteria.
Right.
And I've been able to, get enough places that allow me to do that, and it's definitely a living. It's a job. It's definitely a job now, which is good, and it's also bad sometimes. It's like, gotta go to work. After working all day on the farm, I gotta go to work again.
Right.
But I'm very fortunate to be able to have that as financial support. Because I don't know if you know, but farming is not a super lucrative career.
Well.
I don't know if that's earth-shattering news to any of your listeners, but
I do have a question about that.
Okay.
Is there a relationship between your career as a farmer and the music you write?
Some. I mean, like I said, I've written, a fair number of songs about farming, about just family and things like that. I always feel like I can only write so many of those songs before I feel like I'm just saying the same thing over and over again, which is fine, I think, if you're talking about heartache and love. To me, those things, you can never really overdo it. But if it's I'm writing 10 songs about my grandparents, it's that's hard for me to I feel like, oh, I've said it all. I said it all in this song. But it's great. Honestly, it's a great. I have a lot of flexibility with farming. I mean, there are certain times a year it's tough. I mean, it's 7 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day. But even then, it's I get done. I still have time to get to this gig at 7 or 8 o'clock.
Yeah. So
go do it. And it honestly, it took so I still farm with my dad. And in the beginning, I think he was a little hesitant. You're just out having fun, drinking beer. You should be home. And then over the years, it's like, he appreciates, like, oh, this is a career. You know, it's a job. You can make money doing this. And so he's a little more forgiving. How about that? And we kind of have started working, or like if I have a really good gig on Friday night, maybe we're not going to cut hay on Wednesday.
Right.
Because it's important that I am free and able to do this. So we've been able to work around it for the most part, which is great. And then, of course, like during the winter time, lots of flexibility to come and do things like this.
Right. Growing up in a rural community, and this region, this probably isn't a good term to use and not the term I'm looking for, but is very oversaturated with old-time music and bluegrass music.
Okay.
Did you ever feel any pressure to play that style?
Not pressure, but I definitely am aware of it, and I love it. Every time I'm at anything where there's bluegrass music, I just smile, and I love it. It's amazing. Honestly, from my perspective, I see less and less of that.
Really?
I don't, like most of the places that I play at, or that have music around town, the venues that I play at, that's not as prevalent as it used to be. Right. And honestly, like, I don't know how you have a much more steeped background in this than I do, but around the time of the Oh Brother Where Art Thou movie in I think 2000 or 2001 or something, it was huge. You could not throw a rock in this town without hitting a banjo player at an open mic night. It was crazy. And I really think it stuck around for, I don't know, at least 10 or 15 years. There was always a mandolin in a rock band or a banjo player in some funk band. It was so weird. These old-timey, old instruments that people were bringing back. Now, I know there's still lots of people doing it.
Right.
And it's fantastic. I love that type of music. But yeah, it's definitely not, I'm sure there are places where people do play as, bluegrass bands, but not as much as they were.
Right. Maybe more exclusive to festivals and not so much.
Yeah, and I'm sure that stuff is still going like gangbusters. I hope so. I hope it is. It's it's the real music of America, I guess.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So what genre would you say you mostly identify with? There is one.
I generally get lumped into like the folk, country, Americana genre, whatever those buzzwords mean to people. Generally that means it's somebody playing and singing on acoustic guitar, which is fine. I guess if it has to be labeled, I'm fine with those labels.
Right, definitely. Yeah. Whenever you do cover songs, and this is just out of my personal curiosity, what kind of artists do you usually like to play? I've heard you do Joni Mitchell, which is fantastic.
Yeah, she's amazing, and she's extremely complicated and hard to do. She's one of those kind of people that are kind of untouchable.
Right.
So I do one, and I'm like, okay, that's all I can do. I definitely, I used to play, I would do entire sets of Bob Dylan stuff, Just,
wow.
But I love the Beatles, and people who, a lot of times you hear people say, oh, the Beatles, they're so easy. And I'm like, have you really listened to the Beatles music? It's pretty complex, and they'll be going along and it's real easy, and then all of a sudden it's some left turn, and it's amazing. They're amazing musicians. So I do a lot of that. I love Tom Petty. Some of them, like newer people, I cover a lot of Jason Isbell songs. He's a newer person.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Have you played much outside of the Ozarks region?
No, not really. I did one time. I put out, I guess it was my second album, and we thought this is going to be like the big push.
Oh, wow.
We're gonna try and make this a thing. We'll get a bus and tour the country, or get a van, and I did 3 shows like in a weekend, and I drove to St. Louis, and then Kansas City, and then Fayetteville with a band in one car.
Wow.
And I would never do that again.
Really?
It was fun. We had a good time, but we lost money, for sure.
Right.
By the time we drove all the way around. And so that was pretty eye-opening to me. I was like, okay, that's not for me. And I have great respect for people who can somehow start out like that and do that and then, turn it into something. But it is never something I would ever want to do. Ever want to do.
Would you say whenever you did play outside the region, was the reception any different?
Yeah, usually, yeah, that's hard to say. There were people there, so it was fine. It was good. It was a good reception. But no, I don't know.
Right.
Pass.
Pass. Well, I think that's all the questions I have for you. Do you have anything else that would be pertinent?
Be cool, stay in school, say no to drugs.
Amen.
Yeah. Be yourself. If you want to play music, play music. Don't ever let anybody tell you that you can't make a living at it. Mm-hmm. They're all different levels. It doesn't have to be, the big, playing at the Super Bowl or playing at Madison Square Garden. Like, you can do this if you really want to. There are avenues all over the place, all over this town, to play music. Not just for a living, but for fun. There's great open mic nights and jam nights and all kinds of places you can play. So the Ozarks music is alive and well.
Amazing. The best advice.
The best advice? Okay.
Well, would you want to play us one more song or two more before?
Sure. Yeah, I'll play this song. Let's see here. So I have, in my illustrious career, I've opened up for a lot of people, a lot of local bands. But there have been a couple times I've actually opened for a couple bigger bands. There's a band called America that was pretty big in the 70s. And then last year I opened for a guy named Josh Turner at the Galois. And it was amazing playing on a stage for 1,000 people. And the first time I played opening for America, I played this song. And I've always thought this was kind of a funny song. But you can only tell the story so many times, and generally I'm playing for the same 20 or 30 people. So at some point I just kind of shut up and play the song. But I played it this night, and I could hear people laughing, like these pockets of laughter, and I was like, oh yeah, this is a funny song. And people are getting it, because these people are hearing it for the very first time.
I love that.
And then I sang the chorus, and everybody started applauding. I was still in the middle of the song. I was like, this is incredible. This is greatest. And then I completely forgot the words to the rest of the song. And I said, I'm sorry, I forgot the words. I'm just going to sing the chorus. And I sang the chorus again and got out of there. So hopefully I won't forget the song, the words to the song. But this song is about being in the opening band. Doors open at 8. Play at 9. Let me make myself clear. Don't bring too much gear, and be finished on time. You better play till 9:30, maybe 9:45. But if you play till 10, you never will play again in this dirty old dive. 'Cause you won't make much money, but you get drinks for free. And you might meet a girl, so just give it a whirl. Say, will you dance with me? Most people won't listen, 'cause you're the opening band. And by the time you were through, you might have broke through and made a few fans. No one pays attention except a few in the back. And when they ask for your name, you're not used to this fame. It's your first autograph. CDs are $10, maybe 2 for 15. Yeah, I'll cut you a deal, 'cause I just wanna feel some meaning to this thing. 'Cause you won't make much money, you get drinks for free, and you might meet a girl, so just give it a whirl. Say, will you dance with me? Most people won't listen, 'cause you're the opening bell. By the time you were through, you might have broke through and made a few fans. By the end of the show, you just never know, you might have made a few fans.
So good.
Hey, thanks.
It's fantastic.
Thank you. Honestly, that's one of those songs, sometimes it's hard for me to sing it,
Really?
because I start thinking about when I wrote it, and then I think about every time I forgot the words, and then I think of the crowd response. My wife shot some great video of them, my kids and her and I can hear my kids yelling and screaming and clapping, and I'm just like, I mean, that's everything. Like,
Amazing.
that's everything. So yeah, there are certain songs that actually, I will say one more thing.
Yeah.
Because as I'm getting older, I'm starting to realize what he meant when he said this. So my grandpa played music, like I said, was always singing everywhere. And after my grandma died, they were married for about 50 years. And of course, he was very sad, and we didn't know how much longer he would live past her. Well, he ended up living another 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And I can remember one time, if he wasn't playing music in the house on the guitar, they always had music on the stereo going, and it was always all the old country songs. And I remember asking him one time if he wanted me to set up, get that going again, play, something he could listen to music to. He said, I just can't do it anymore. I just can't, it hurts too much to listen to those songs. And I can remember being, 22 years old thinking, he doesn't know. How could he think that? That's so sad. And I'm starting to get there. There are certain songs when they come on the radio and you think of, your life maybe being more than half over in some cases, and it starts to hit you. And so there are certain songs that when I'm performing them, I get choked up and I'm thinking, am I going to be able to get through this? So there's wisdom in that. It is sad, but life is sad. So anyway, enough sadness.
Well, it's been amazing.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you
I had a
so
great time.
much for joining me.
My pleasure.
This has been another edition of Songs of the Ozarks with Dallas Jones. Thanks for listening, everybody.